Welcome to the Fancast. My name is Luke Payson, and I am honored to be joined by recent guests of the show and a guest today, Geoff Magin. Welcome back, Geoff.
Thanks for having me on.
Great having you on. You're just under 2 weeks away from fighting for a 247 Fighting Championships amateur 205-pound title against nasty Nick Nash. Let's start off. What does it feel like? You're coming off a great TKO win. We already had you on the show to talk about that, which was awesome. That was probably just over a month ago, so close. So what made you say yes to a fight just about a month and a half after your last fight? And what made you say yes to a title fight? What are your thoughts coming into this one?
So I like to fight often. When I'm healthy, I like to fight all the time. So after this one, we're going to even look to do one more this summer before wrestling gets going again. But yeah, we threw my name in there to 247, and then Nick accepted it. It wasn't originally going to be a title fight, but get a belt after the win, so that's cool.
Yes. Nick was on this show, and there seemed to be a bit of a behind-the-scenes confusion about whether it was going to be a title fight. It's now officially a title fight, and that just goes to show, particularly at the amateur level, there's a lot of things up in the air until it's signed. There's a lot of back and forth depending what the situation is. I've had your friend and double teammate both at your MMA gym and Pitt Wrestling, obviously, James Lito. He talked great things about you. Talk a little bit about how it's been working for you to be a Division I wrestler for Pitt Panthers, for Pitt Wrestling, and also cranking out MMA in between seasons, and what your plans are still going forward with that.
Yeah, so James and I will work out all day long. 2 days with wrestling, and then we'll go in at night to do MMA. So we get a little sick of each other sometimes, but he's a great partner to have, and he's going to do really well in his upcoming bout. The balance really hasn't been that hard. The guys at Stout, all the coaching staff has been really accommodating, and so is my wrestling coach, Coach Gavin. So they make it really easy. It's really just on James and I to get in the gym and put in the work on our own.
Certainly, that makes sense. And what level of eligibility are you this year? Is this your senior last level of eligibility, or do you have 2 more seasons? I know COVID gave everybody a COVID year. So how many more eligible years do you have wrestling for Pitt Panthers, and kind of what are your plans and expectations about that before we turn our attention to this title fight?
So I've had one year of wrestling, I think. So I have 3 years left if I wanted to take it. Be the oldest guy in college wrestling, so I don't think I'm going to spend much longer in college wrestling. This will probably be my last season. Looking forward to turning pro in the spring after the season.
Yeah, that fits perfectly. Thanks for sharing, obviously, your plans wrestling. What are you looking to accomplish? This is probably your last wrestling season. And I think any way you answer this is good. Are you looking to earn, whether it's a starting position or a certain record or a certain accolades at Pitt Wrestling, or are you more seen at wrestling this year as really just continuing to develop and train against incredible talent, knowing that your goal is to go pro in MMA, and that's going to have a different trajectory in your life?
Definitely. So I came to Pitt Wrestling just to learn how to wrestle better, but being competitive, obviously I want to make that starting lineup, and I'm working hard to do that. Wrestling's in full swing right now. We're doing 2-a-days all summer long, so we're definitely working hard, and my goals are always to be the best that I can be in whatever I do. So definitely get the starting spot and do well in the postseason. Those are my goals for wrestling this year.
And since we're talking a little bit more about wrestling, last time you were on, we were talking more specifically about that fight. I believe you wrestle at 197, which means you were there to witness greatness, in the sense of how often does a team get a national champ in Nico, and what does it feel like? Because I know that's wide open. I know he's finished his wrestling career. He was on the Pittsburgh Combat Sports podcast to talk about it. What is the feeling among Pitt wrestling team to have a national champ, number one? And what does it feel like for that national champ to be at your weight class? Because obviously that's sort of impossible shoes to fill, but still a great opportunity for people, you and the other guys at 197, to really compete for that open spot.
Well, Nino was obviously an amazing wrestler. He was unlike anyone I'd ever wrestled in my life. It was like being on ice skates wrestling him. So yeah, he was a phenomenal wrestler and a great teammate, and he taught me a lot of things. And he's actually joined our regional training center, so he's in the room now pretty often, helping out with coaching and sharing his knowledge at the next level. So yeah, having Nino was a huge part in developing as a wrestler.
Sure. And since your plan at Pitt was to develop as a wrestler with goals there, obviously being in that room, there's lots and lots of, I'm sure, wrestling room matches that are going to pay off. That's something we've noticed a lot in MMA, transitioning back to MMA, is that, sure, great wrestlers can do well in MMA, but also guys that have trained against great wrestlers can do well in MMA because you're learning what you need to learn. You put out there that your goal and expectation, you're 22 years old, is by soon as this wrestling season wraps up, to go pro in MMA. Obviously, you mentioned that you might do one more fight after this if you could squeeze it in before wrestling season kicks. What makes you what makes you ready to aim towards a pro debut, let's say next spring or summer?
I think it's my ability to put everything together. So I had the striking coming in to Pitt. I was mainly a striker at the time, so I feel like on the feet I'm very confident in what I can do, and then the wrestling really just helped with the grittiness and the toughness, and became a much better athlete. Obviously became a better wrestler, but that also transitioned into jiu-jitsu. So with all that top pressure and not really giving an inch in the grappling aspect, and then mainly what I've been training lately has been developing jiu-jitsu skill. So Mike, James, and I will train a couple times a week, just learning the basics and learning important positions and really hammering down on the fine details of jiu-jitsu for MMA. So all this time leading up is just great preparation for the next level.
And speaking of, part of your preparation to go pro is to take on the undefeated 5-0 nasty Nick Nash. And I was just checking because we were talking about BJJ and coming in as a good striker. All of his wins, according to Topology, are by some type of submission. What are your thoughts on matching up against him? Do you welcome the fact that kind of his strength is, at least on paper, jiu-jitsu, and your strength is striking and grappling control? Because jiu-jitsu isn't always effective when somebody's a great wrestler and great at top heavy pressure. We've seen in the last probably 5 years at the UFC level that submission artists off their back throwing up submissions like the classic leg triangle does not happen nearly as much as it used to, because the top pressure, heavy ground and pound, and I was at your last fight, you had a takedown and just incredible ground and pound, can really nullify a lot of submissions off the back. And when submissions do happen at the highest level, they typically come from good top pressure, good ground and pound, and then opportunities open up. So what are your thoughts on Nick Nash as far as him being not only undefeated, but all finishes by submission?
Yeah, so I think this is an awesome matchup for me. I'm actually really excited for this fight.
Sure.
I saw a little film, and I think I'm better in every area. I think he's a good athlete. I think I'm a better athlete. My striking's better, wrestling's better, jiu-jitsu's better. A lot of people haven't really seen me fight very much because all my fights end very fast. So they don't know my full potential in all those areas. And I'm finally excited to get someone who's a better opponent. I don't really see this as a level test necessarily, but it's something that I can point to and say, okay, I actually beat somebody worthwhile. So I'm excited about that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's that mix between confidence that obviously you see him as very beatable and you having the skill sets to beat him. But it does matter, particularly when you're eyeing pro, to be able to look back on your record and have a promoter or commissioner look and see a win, potentially over a 5-0 guy. Though that does matter when you're looking at an amateur record. So makes a ton of sense. Also, and this, but to point out to people watching, this is going to be an advanced amateur fight. So 3-minute rounds with a heavier rule set with ground and pound, which of course I've seen what you can do with ground and pound, and no shin guards. For a lot of people, they look at advanced amateur, and if you don't know all the details, it looks like a pro fight. It looks much more like a pro fight. This is a 9-minute fight potentially if it would go to decision. And you mentioned that you've been finishing people so early, and you have been. And sometimes people look at a finisher and think, oh, if they get taken into deep waters, then where's their gas tank? Now, I don't think that's an issue because you and James Lito train double, triple, quadruple times because of wrestling. But how much confidence does your insane training of both being a D1 collegiate athlete and training all the time in MMA, how much confidence does that give you going into a situation where you guys could very well be in minute 8, and that could decide the fight potentially if it's later in the rounds?
Yeah, I wish it was longer, honestly. I wish I had more time in there. We just got off of a wrestling tournament, the U23 Nationals, and wrestled 6 matches over 2 days. So the gas tank's not going to be a problem. I'm excited to put the pressure on him. The rule set, it's a little bit nerfed. You can't kick in the head, which I wish you could do. The knees and the elbows to the head. So I feel like it makes me less dangerous. I wish that the rule set was a little bit was pro. So I'm really excited. This is my last amateur one, and then I can really use all my tools because there's a lot people haven't seen just because of the rule set and just the time, as you were saying, finishing everyone.
Sure. I mean, when you were saying the weapons you wish you had, I was thinking, well, that you're just saying you want to go pro, right? Because knees to the face, elbows to head kicks, some of those rule sets make sense, I think, to limit them to pro because that's where there's kind of more risk involved, but also more reward involved. Makes perfect sense. You're clearly mindset and skill wise ready to go pro. I had the honor of calling your debut amateur fight, and maybe depending on who you go pro for, I might have the honor of calling your pro debut. I'm sure 247, Jim Mooney, Hunter, and Ryan, that would probably be a great idea down the road. So we've talked about this matchup. Let's talk about the fact of how you see this, or your idea of how you see this fight going, whether you want to make a specific prediction or if you just want to kind of tell people why they should be excited about this matchup come July 15th, Brawl in the Burgh 17 at Marova Convention Center.
I see this fight going my way. I'm ready to fight through every position and just do my absolute best. People should come watch because I'm explosive, I'm exciting, and I always go for the finish.
Indeed. And you're incredible. You train out of an incredible gym. You and your teammate James are both on this card. You've already said your thoughts about James. When Lito was back on the card, I had him talk about you and the fact that you're going up against a guy who's undefeated, and he obviously said some great things. If you haven't watched it, watch it. That'll help you when you get annoyed by hanging out with him too much. You'll be like, oh, at least he says nice things about me on MMA Fancast. But it truly is that you and James are a definition of iron sharpens iron. I think you're both young and really an up and coming at the pro level. You ready to go pro. I think James's pro debut is a little bit farther away as he has a little bit more time in wrestling. But I think for both of you training out of stout and just being at such a high level, I think we say it often in MMA, but when people really rise quickly in amateur MMA, they are the future of pro MMA in 5 years, right? Once you go pro, it usually takes a couple of years to kind of establish whatever that record is. You might fly through it faster than that, but usually within a couple of years, you're kind of building the record. And then 3 or 4 years in, kind of looking at where your level is. I can't wait to see. I've mentioned it on another podcast, but it bears mentioning again when we talk about people buying tickets from you. giving you credit if they buy tickets from 247fighting.com or 247 Live for the pay-per-view or directly from you or your gym. But a thing that's cool is it's not often that there are 5 advanced amateur fights on one card. That's a very rich, high-level amateur talent. And of course, you're one of 3 title fights. Your title fight is very exciting. I think in general, people like the bigger boys, you know, at 205. You guys are both explosive. And I started saying at your last fight, I was just there to watch and do some interviews, that you looked like Captain America, or like really G.I. Joe, you know, really shredded. You go by the nickname Juice, so that's fantastic. But I mean, you've got a great physique, as you know. You're young, 6'3" at 205 is kind of perfect for long-term 205. You're not a short 205er that's going to have to cut lower. You're kind of the stereotypical kind of perfect size. But for people that are excited to come to watch you, also keep in mind that you're one of 3 title fights, 135, 145, and you plus 5 total, and an incredible pro fight. I know you know Justin, the General Patton, so as the main event. So all the way through the card, it's going to be incredible. I was talking to a teammate of yours, GOAT James Padmore, and he was saying about the fact that he's 2-0, fighting a 2-0 guy. He's already called out the fact that if you win and go pro afterwards, once you're pro ranks, he would love the open belt at 205. What are your thoughts on him? He's 2-0 with 2 knockouts. He's 31 years old, getting into the game maybe a little bit later than some, fighting another guy who's even older, 35 years old, Adam Caldwell. Both 2 wins, 2 knockouts in the first couple rounds. What are your thoughts on your teammate James Padmore, not only on this fight coming up against Adam Caldwell, but whether or not you think he could potentially be fighting for the vacant belt if you were to win and then go pro?
Yeah, James is a great training partner. He's got incredible takedown defense. That's something people might not know about him, but he's incredibly strong. Yeah, he can have the title fight. I'm not going to defend the belt.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, go
That's
for
what
it.
he was saying. I made a mistake on the interview with him because I didn't realize you guys trained together. So I said, because he was saying, I want to fight for a title. I said, okay, no matter who wins between, you know, you, Magin, or Nash. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm not going to fight my teammate. And I was like, oh, crap. So I wasn't trying to cause any problems. He handled it very well. Certainly wasn't trying to stir the pot or anything there. He responded very well. And then he explained, of course, that he knows you're going pro. So he'd be happy to watch you win it and then fight for the title. So I always try to point out on this show, because Jim Mooney and I are buddies, that I try to do some amateur matchmaking for him because he's an incredible matchmaker for 247. But I always joke on this show that, you know, if I see opportunities to throw out fight ideas, but it's been great having you on the card at your level. I think this is a great opportunity for people to see you fight for possibly your last amateur fight, or maybe your second to last amateur fight. It's just absolutely incredible opportunity. So I appreciate you coming on. I think if people don't know your name, now's the time to start following you, and the crowd that 247 brings in Monroeville Convention Center with back-to-back nights. Oh, that's my ending question. Your teammate James, I asked him about whether or not he'd be staying around after weigh-ins Friday night to watch Brawl in the Burgh, and he's going to catch it Sunday on replay on 247 because he wants to be focusing on his fight. Are you planning on staying around after your weigh-in Friday night, July 14th, to watch the card for Brawl in the Burgh, or are you game set and going to catch it in reruns on replays on Sunday after your fight?
Yeah, I'll catch you in the reruns. I'll watch the stout guys that competed and talk to them about their matches. But yeah, I'm gonna be laser focused on Friday after that weigh-in.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. You know, you and James Padmore, as well as James Lito, I mean, you guys train at that high level at stout for a reason, and it's interesting that both you guys have exactly the same answer and exactly the same reason. So I think that goes a long way. That's something that I know he's not your coach, but Isaac Greeley is the main event for Brawl in the Burgh, and I think he has 7 Mat Factory people on his card beneath him, and even he's going to have to kind of decide, is he focused in on himself? And you know, there's that balance between being a teammate, which you guys are great teammates, but good gyms recognize that you've got to be dialed in on your own opportunity. Can't wait to see both cards for people that aren't fighting and that have the opportunity to go to both cards. It's going to be an incredible back-to-back night. I'm so thrilled to have you back on. Can't wait to see what happens. I don't think people will not only not be disappointed, I think people are going to be talking about, because you and Nick, I say this oftentimes, sometimes amateurs end up fighting again at pro. You know, no matter what happens, you guys are good enough, obviously, to go pro at 205 in the future. And we've seen fighters sometimes repeatedly fight each other as they grow up kind of together. So I think this could be the first of potentially several matches of you guys, particularly if it rematches at pro level. Thanks so much for coming on. You've been listening to Luke Basin from MMA Fancast with Geoff Juice Magin. Thanks so much, buddy.
Thanks a lot.
You take care. Best skills to you. July 15th, Brawl in the Burgh 17. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Bye.
You got it.